In January 2025, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration banned the use of red dye number 3 in food, drugs, and dietary supplements, citing evidence from animal studies that it can cause cancer. Red dye number 3 has already been banned in cosmetics and topical drugs in the U.S. since 1990, and it's banned in food products in Europe, Australia, and New Zealand. Welcome to Store Brands Spotlight. I'm Greg Sleater, Executive Editor of Store Brands. Joining me today to talk about the ban and its impact on products in the private label marketplace is Jessica Gaudette, Director of Process and Technology at Daymon, and Michael Dagerath, Vice President of Quality Assurance at Daymon. Jess and Doc, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Good to be here.
It's our pleasure, and we always love having and talking to the Daymon folks because I think it's great education for our viewers and our readers who are the retailers out there, many of which you guys work with. And personally, I always get an education, so it's always good for me to learn something new on a daily basis. And especially when we get into a topic that's a little unique and I think an interesting one, since this is a common ingredient in so many products. Doc, I want to start with you. This ban from the FDA on red dye or red number 3, what led them to do it at this time?
Yeah, it's a great question, Greg, because I think it's really about customer perception and customer pressure at this point, or consumer perception about it. So the FDA will state that while there were some tests that did show cancer in rats or mice, that is not necessarily true in humans. But I think consumer perception around this and just concerns in general are causing them to rethink this and have caused them to actually take action to revoke it.
Right. And it's interesting too, because, there's so much information out there on the internet, some of it good, some of it bad. But it just seemed like suddenly it happened. So that's interesting. Just from your understanding of this, why is this considered unsafe? And is it just the cancer risk that it poses, or is there any other issue out there?
Yeah, I would say it's the cancer risk that it poses. And there's just been a lot of news about synthetic dyes and the effect on, the health of people.
Yeah, I would add to that, Greg, that there's also some concerns about how this may affect children and their development and behavioral observations and things like that. That's another perception that's out there.
So the type of food and drugs that are most affected by this, how widespread will this be specifically in the private label world?
So Jess, she does a great job of leading up a product hub platform for us where we can search all of our products at one time and find out what products is red number 3 in this case. And when you do that, what you find is the categories are pretty widespread. So they're in soda, they're in cookies and candies and confection, they're in over-the-counter drugs. So, a lot of times it's used as a color cue for over-the-counter drugs as well. So it's in a pretty widespread set of categories, including salty snacks.
Yeah. And to add to that, Greg, Daymon's technology solution that Doc alluded to is Daymon Blueprint Product Hub. And it helps our retailers digitize their product data, specifically around quality specifications, and giving them an easy and quick way to identify what products contain certain ingredients so that they can focus on taking action rather than focus on digging through files and documents to identify the products that contain that ingredient. It gives them a quick way to capture what items are impacted so that they can just jump right into that reformulation or other action that they need to take.
Jess, I'm curious, and I don't know if you know this answer. Is this one of those things where you put it in the computer and the computer starts popping out just, hundreds of products, maybe some that the retailers weren't aware of that had this ingredient in it?
One of the things that we do is we'll work with the retailer to capture all of their private brand product data, and we can work with them in terms of uploading their information so that it's digitized and available from a reporting standpoint. But there's also the functionality for them to engage their suppliers in the population of that data to go through a review and approval process, which then allows the retailer to run reports, query the information, and get exactly what they need based on all of their product details being digitized.
And I'm assuming that technology will help shorten the timeline regarding compliance and how products are phased out or the ingredients need to be updated?
Yes, absolutely. It's really about driving efficiencies for both our retail partners and our suppliers to connect and engage and get this information captured to drive that speed and efficiency through the collection, review, approval, and management of the product data.
And are you aware of, or Doc, are you aware of a timeline right now for when these products need to be brought into compliance?
Yes. So we have about 2 years to make that happen. So having your information digitized so you can have that report in 5 minutes is critical because people need to be working on solutions now. So the implementation of for food is in January of 2027, and then for over-the-counter drug products, that is in January of 2028. So time is of the essence because you really need to be having that change implemented into the supply chain about 6 months prior to the deadline. So we really have about 16 months at this point to come up with a solution and start to put that in effect in with new packaging being printed and new production.
Right, gotcha. And I'm just curious with red dye number 3, was it an ingredient, if you will, used specifically for aesthetics, or was there a flavor component to it? What was ultimately the reason why this was used in so many products, or is still used, I guess?
Yeah, so the primary purpose and really the only purpose that red dye number 3 would be used is really for color. A lot of times we always say that your first bite is with your eyes. So you think of a cereal that maybe has red Fruit Loops in them or something like that, or, confectionery, strawberry cream, icing, those types of things. Your eyes are giving you cues to what that food should be and therefore what it's going to taste like. So that's why we always call it the first bite. It's with your eyes. And that's really why you would use a Red 3. Red 3 is very good in the sense, from a scientist's perspective, which I am. It's very stable. You can use it in multiple pH settings, and it has a long shelf life to it. So it's a great ingredient in that sense. But there are consumer concerns with it, and there are also alternatives to what you could still accomplish, the same end result with different ingredients.
Doc, you beautifully led to the next question, was in terms of that adjustment period for the private label brands the retailers have, the suppliers they work with. What are they going to need to do to adjust to comply with this rule? And as you just mentioned, some of the alternatives that they could use.
Sure. Well, this is where it gets a little tricky, Greg, because the most obvious alternative right now would be to go to Red 40, which is also a synthetic dye. That would be the easiest, most cost-effective way to go. However, it's not necessarily one I would recommend at this point, because I think Red 40 could suffer the same fate as Red 3 has and many others, because just 2 weeks ago, West Virginia introduced a bill where they're going to look to eliminate all synthetic food dyes. So that would be yellow 1, yellow 2, blue. Just all of the different ones that are out there. So I'm not sure I would go to Red 40, even though that is one path you could go. The other paths that you could go really involve things that are going to be more natural, in the sense of you could use beet juice or fruit juices like a strawberry juice, cherry juice. You could also use cochineal, which is, from an insect, but that could affect the kosher status of a product. But those are all alternatives to what you could come up with. And Red 40 is an alternative, but you may find yourself just going through the same exercise again. And maybe Red 40 is a step in the right direction in the sense that it buys you a little bit of time. But I think ultimately brands are going to need to be looking at alternatives that are not necessarily the synthetic food dyes.
Interesting. West Virginia's talking about doing that, that seems like something that would be California that would be, be the disruptor and leading the way and making everybody stop and pause. But West Virginia, so that's an interesting one.
It is very interesting, and I think it just goes to show you the concerns among people with young children of, all of these things are dose dependent. So, for a healthy adult, maybe red thread 3 is not a problem. Okay. But for a 3-year-old, the same dose, based on their body weight and everything could be more of a concern for them. But I think parents are getting that information. They're concerned about it and they're looking for alternatives. Other countries, as you know, don't allow some of these ingredients in their products and they're questioning it. And, one of the great things about America is that we have freedom and liberty to do these things and create alternative products and let the consumer vote with their pocketbook.
I will just add to that as a parent myself, I question it when I look at products with ingredients and, should my kids really be having this? And I do notice around certain times of the year when candy, for instance, is more prevalent, there is maybe not a huge noticeable impact, but there's definitely an impact in the consumption of those ingredients and the impact on behavior.
Doc just laid out a lot of some alternatives and some things that retailers can do. Is finding that alternative and then the time constraint, are those the biggest challenges they face, or are there other challenges that retailers, when looking to redevelop some of their private label products that carry red number 3, are there some other challenges they're facing right now with this new rule?
Yeah, so one of the things that we do at Daymon is we also have a sourcing aspect to what we do. And as you're looking for solutions, whether it's Red 40 or beet juice or some other alternative, you also need to be looking at supply chain because all the brands in the US are starting to look at this and you're going to want to dig deep into that. So Daymon sourcing team is one of our partners as we look at doing that to make sure that we understand what the cost is, the availability, because ultimately, as a product development person, what you don't want to do is come up with a solution that is not practical in the sense that the supply chain has not been considered. So we partner with our Daymon sourcing team to make sure that we understand the sources of these alternative ingredients. And then really, depending on the type of product that you're going to put it in, you need to, as a scientist, you need to look at the stability of that product. So is it going to be a dry product? Is it going to be what we would call an aqueous phase, which makes it less stable? Is your shelf life 2 days? Is it 7 days? Is it 2 years? You also look at the pH of the product. So the acidic environment can also destabilize some of these solutions. So there's not a one size fits all, unfortunately. But that's where, product development people really step up and shine. And when they partner with their supply chain partners, then they can come up with a good solution that can work across several products.
Thought just popped into my head in terms of, okay, so how do we, as a product supplier or a retailer with private label, how do you, deal with this challenge? Is there an ability for them to learn from what goes on in other countries that have, banned this, for a while now, and to see how those companies have dealt with this issue in other countries?
Yes, that's absolutely one of the things you would do. So whether it's over in Japan or if it's in Europe, both of those are very good locations to look at. And within Daymon, we have customers in all of those markets. So as a food scientist, that's one of the things I would do is I would work with Jess and understand, what's the power of the data that we have internally within Daymon to then look at those products, the ingredients in those products, and then use that to kind of get a head start on finding a solution because time really is ticking right now. And especially if you're going to do some shelf life studies and things like that, you need to find some alternatives quickly. There are many suppliers of ingredients that that would be happy to offer some alternatives, and we would also seek them out and get their counsel as well.
Is there any concern as you discuss this topic with retailers, any concern that this could lead to temporary product shortages?
So I don't think it's going to lead to temporary product shortages. I think what's going to happen is that everybody will comply. However, the customer experience will change. So some of these products that I just talked about, the candies and things like that, it may not be that deep red, the vibrant hue of color that you're used to. I think in California, this law is also called the Skittles bill or something like that, because you're visually, you're just used to these really bright colors and things like that. So I've worked with these products in the past, and when we've tried to come up with alternatives, we've been successful. However, the color hue is just not the same. It's a dull red as opposed to a bright, vibrant red or something like that. So the products will be available. There may be some customer education and expectations that are a challenge that you need to overcome. The good news is that everybody's going to have to overcome those same hurdles, roughly at the same time. So typically what happens in this is brands will get their solutions over the next 12 months, have them ready to go. And then, in July of 2026, that's when they will start to implement their solution so that their product is hitting the market about the same time as everybody else's product, so that you're not being compared unfairly to other products that haven't already taken that solution.
From a data perspective too, they can leverage the information that's in Product Hub to say what is the new makeup of our product and the ingredients, and what type of claims or call outs can we make on that to help with that consumer adjustment to, it's no longer colored with artificial or synthetic ingredients, but now it's colored with natural ingredients, which is why you're seeing that, bold red change to something that's not as bold. So there's data that can be leveraged in the system to help with that story as those reformed products roll out.
Jess, you talked earlier as a parent who reads the back of products and you're very conscious about what's in the product. It's kind of a two-parter. One, what kind of consumer reaction do you anticipate to the change?
I would say, as a parent, right, I think it's a positive change. It's things that we want, and it helps us in terms of if the ingredients are being removed and we know that we can trust that this product now does not contain that ingredient, it's an easier purchase, right? Whereas currently it's looking at the back of labels to say which one is the cleanest, right, and making that choice consciously versus having that already done and removed for you when you're shopping products at the shelf.
And do you think this will have an impact on maybe a growing consumer demand for products that have more natural ingredients or clean label products? Do you think it'll stir that conversation even more?
I think so. And I feel like that conversation is already out there, right? It's something that people already want. So it's just adding, it's heightening the topic, and it's bringing it more into the public eye as far as, this is the direction that we should be going, having those clean ingredients in our projects and making available for our consumers products that are better.
And for our last question, would love to get the input of both of you, because you come at this from different perspectives. And Doc, I'll start with you. How should retailers message this out to educate consumers about the change, especially if there's going to be a noticeable shift in that color of the product?
Yeah, Greg, thank you for that question, because what's going to happen is, the media is doing a very good job of getting this word out. And as Jess said, I think as we go through the next 18 to 24 months, There'll be more and more stories. Certainly, as we get ready to implement this, the media will be doing a lot of the heavy lifting for the brands. But the brand itself can do two things. One is they're going to have to redo the photographs on the picture. If there's an illustration, photography, anything like that, they're going to reset the expectation for the customer subtly by having to do that, because that's truth in advertising that has to be true for the label itself. The second thing is they will try to use a positive claim and say, now colored with beet juice or something like that on the front. So the customer will see the package front, the illustration, the photography looks a little different. So that'll be number one. And then second, they will see a positive claim where the brand will be talking about what the solution was that they did implement. And then we'll all see how the general consumers look at it. I think Jess is right. She represents a growing number of consumers that are out there that are interested, looking for this, ready to buy it. And then there's other consumers out there that maybe are not interested and may be disappointed with this. But I think as long as everybody's doing, playing by the same rules, overall, it'll be a positive thing for our society.
And just your thoughts on how retailers should and the brands themselves should be messaging this to consumers?
Yeah, I think it's very similar to what Doc had said. There needs to be the correct representation of those changes on packaging, but it also, to me, is a positive message that they're cleaning up the products, and as a result, this is the benefit to the consumer. So with that's what resonates with me for this.